There we go. We are live on Facebook. I'm Veronica Monet. Welcome to the Shame-Free Zone. I've got a very special guest today. Her name is Dr. Susan Campbell. I've got a copy of her book right here. I am busy reading my way through this book because, oh my God, do I need it. And it's possible that you or somebody that you know or love really needs this too. We're going to be talking about how to go from the triggered state. That's when we're feeling very fear-based and oftentimes pushed back into our reptilian brain, which is not terribly intelligent, to a place of feeling tranquil so that we are online with that big, beautiful brain we all have and wish we had more access to when we are in a crunch. So, Dr. Campbell, may I call you Susan?
Call me Susan, thanks.
I am so glad that you're joining me here in the Shame-Free Zone, and I'm really grateful for your book. Couldn't have come at a better time for me, and I think for a lot of people. And I'm just going to briefly tell those people who haven't heard of you a little bit about you because you have a very illustrious resume. Dr. Susan Campbell is the author of 11 books, including this most recent one, From Triggered to Tranquil: How Self-Compassion and Mindful Presence Can Transform Relationship Conflicts and Heal Childhood Wounds. And she's appeared on CNN and Good Morning America. She's guest lectured at Harvard, Stanford, and other academic institutions. And she not only has a private practice, but consults with Fortune 500 companies. So pretty amazing. And I know your career's been going on for quite some time. I think it's been about 30 years that you've been doing this.
55 years.
Oh, 55 years. I'm sorry. Well, Susan, one of the things that I'm noticing about your book, it's a self-help book. And if you were to look at my library, I actually have hard copies of books. That's what I do. I like books. I have so many self-help books on those shelves, just tons. Psychology books, sociology books, self-help books. And one of the things that I am just so enjoying about the tone of the way you write is you have got so much immense wisdom. You're nuancing these details for us that a lot of authors kind of give these simplistic formulas and they don't bring in all the, but what if this happened and what if that happens? And they oftentimes don't seem to understand how the body and the brain interface with each other. And I'm just really appreciating how you're bringing all of that step by step. It's very slow and loving and calm and wise. So thank you.
Thank you for saying.
Thank you for your contribution to my own personal healing journey. I want to ask you just a little bit. I'm a trauma survivor. I've tons. Matter of fact, I was recently, that's in a couple of years ago, diagnosed with complex trauma. So horrific childhood, just tons of abuse in my family, and also passed down from generation to generation. So we had incest and domestic violence on both sides of the family. So that's coming down, into my DNA. And then of course it's actually happening in the home too. So very difficult to deal with, raised in a cult. So certainly somebody like me is looking for all kinds of tools for healing that trauma. And I've been on this journey now for 36 years of healing. So I feel like I've made a lot of progress and I'm really grateful for that. And yet there's these areas where, I'll notice my physiology is just running in flight or freeze a lot of the time. So it takes a lot to turn this thing around. And I'm doing it with a lot of help. But almost, there's this whole idea of the wounded healer, right? So I am an internal family systems informed coach, and I love helping my clients. I'm wanting to just get to know you a little bit more personally, past your resume.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of wounding in your life that led you into this field? And if not, that's fine. But if you could just kind of give us a little bit of a snapshot of why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, well, I actually came from a pretty functional family, but my early trauma was right after I was born. So actually, first of all, I came from a functional family, and I felt like I have a lot to offer the world because I can provide a secure environment for people to speak into without my own stuff getting in the way. So right away, people would seek me out. And so I decided to become a therapist. But, you know, I was also curious about, well, what are the deeper reasons? Why am I becoming a therapist? I'm not like these other people who have all this trauma. And then I started looking more, and of course went to tons of personal growth workshops and read books like you. And what I discovered is I too have early trauma, and it was serious from the point of view of the infant who was experiencing it. And I talk about this in my book, Getting Real, which was published in 2001. But basically, my mother's milk didn't come down. And that happens to a lot of new mothers. I was the firstborn. And we sort of had a struggle, like she's hurting, but she's trying to be a good mother, and her anxiety is coming through to me. So I get the message. My mom and I talked about this a lot, and I've had, hypnotic regression and things like that. But I get the message that if I'm hungry, it makes somebody else feel uncomfortable.
Oh.
And it's like, if I have any wants, that's not safe. So, I began to bring some empathy to that little child of my own, through psychotherapy, through meditation, and just through reading books. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I seem to have this amazing, easy life.
Yeah.
But no matter how easy you think you had it, there's probably some place back there that maybe you want to minimize your trauma because you don't think it's as big as somebody else's, but we have to find compassion for whatever it was for us. And I was able to do that. And I think it's made me a much better therapist, and
I'm
hopefully
sure.
a better writer too,
Yeah, exactly. Because that adds depth to us. I think our traumas are opportunities, but I also had a difficult birth, and in my case, they separated me from my mother for 12 hours, and I just cried my little lungs out for 12 hours, and nobody ever came.
Yeah,
And I was, so the message I got was that when I need help or comfort, nobody's ever going to come.
Yeah, I had that. I had some of that too, actually. Not exactly that, but yes. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that it's great. I think that you and I are talking about birth trauma because some people may not have actual memories of trauma events, and yet things happen to them that shape their response to their environment.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to highlight, and your book addresses this, and we'll get into that a little bit later, that the entire planet has been traumatized these last couple of years, because we've had this huge upheaval of our status quo. And so the fear and anxiety of the pandemic, or the polarization of various different political camps, the loss of friendships and family who disagree with you or don't see things the way you do. And that's happened around the globe. That hasn't been just in our communities. So and then of course there's the climate crisis, which has, had very, very painful impacts on some people's lives, whether losing their homes to fire or flood or severe storms like hurricanes. And so there's got migrations happening on whole continents where people are finding they don't have water anymore.
Yep.
So I think the whole planet is really in a trauma state right now. And I see this a lot of times just driving down the freeway. Sometimes it just feels like the agitation and aggression is higher than it's ever been. So, and we have the statistics, of course, to bear that out. It's really sad, but murder rates climbed, domestic violence rates climbed. all since the pandemic.
Yeah,
So
suicide rates climbed 600%.
oh my God, I didn't even know that. And
Yeah.
then overdoses from drugs also skyrocketed. So bottom line is, you need this. We all need this. Anybody that's watching this, if you don't think it affects you, there's people in your life that are being affected by this. So we're going to talk about ways that you can not only deal with your own triggers, but how to deal with other people's triggers, because most of us are kind of, that's coming up against, like, people are getting triggered around us in ways they didn't used to. So how do we deal with that? But first I want to ask you, Susan, about romantic relationships, because, you know, I'm a relationship coach and a sexologist, and a lot of the people who come to my YouTube and my Facebook page are looking for information about their relationships. And I know, and I think it's great that your book actually calls out how we can deal with our partner when they're triggered. So could you say something about that?
Yeah, sure. But first of all, the closer you are to somebody, the more interdependent you are with this person, the more you're going to get triggered. If you're at all triggerable, and just about everyone is, because what triggers people is a sense of disconnection from the one we depend on, or from somebody who's important to us. That's the main cause of getting triggered these days. There are a few other causes, like a threat to my self-image and disagreement with somebody that I love, but that again boils down to disconnection. So the survival alarm system in the amygdala area of the brain is this little area that's always scanning for some kind of danger. And in primitive times, it was physical threats to our physical survival. Now it's your partner walks out of the room while you're talking and you're triggered. Your fear, because triggers are based on fear stories that are connected to unfortunate faulty learning in your childhood, such as my voice doesn't matter, my needs don't matter, I'm not important, they're walking away. So we have this fear story, which creates reactivity, fight, flight, freeze, as you mentioned. So what do you do? First, we have to learn about the whole process of triggering. We have to become a little more sophisticated about, well, what are some of the early warning signs of me being triggered? And what are some of the early warning signs of my partner being triggered? And in the book, I have exercises where partners sit down together and they do a little self-inventory and they share that. Because for me, when I'm triggered, I clam up. When you're triggered, you pursue me. Okay, wow, and when I clam up, it looks like I don't care, but it's because I care so much that, my whole higher brain just went offline because I'm so scared of losing you. But you don't look like that. You're moving away from me, and
wow.
I have to go chasing you.
So, oh my God, you just unpacked the last fight I
had. Well, you're not alone. That's extremely common fight.
What I tend to move away and collapse. I saw that when I was reading your book. I was like, yeah, I used to pursue. It's fascinating, actually. Back in my first marriage, I pursued a lot, but he was always running away, so I was always going after him.
Depends on who you're with, which
yes. Well, now I run away. Yeah. It's not because I don't care.
Exactly. You're trying to protect your nervous system, and the other person's trying to protect their nervous system. And so we need to get into a conversation about, okay, if we know that we have these different behaviors that just automatically happen when we get triggered. Okay, so now we've got a little more awareness. What can we do with that? And there's a few more questions besides just what's your behavior, but let's just start with that. I teach couples to have a pause agreement, to first be very interested in learning about triggers and learning and the biggest thing is accepting that it happens to all of us. It doesn't mean you're bad or wrong. I mean, you've been talking about shame for a long time, and there's nothing, people tend to go into shame when they kind of lose their calmness.
Yeah.
But we have to be more compassionate about that. And
you really stress that in your book, and I appreciate that a lot, because as somebody who's a professional coaching other people, especially around anger management, I'm pretty good about the anger thing. Not spotless, but pretty good. I got a well established track record of not yelling and threatening.
Yeah.
But now I see that I have a tendency to do the collapsing and become tearful, and watching myself implode like that, I definitely can feel some shame around that.
Yeah.
It's such a helpless place and feels so small. So how would somebody not feel ashamed of being triggered? I know you say it's normal.
Yeah.
And that's probably a first step, is just knowing that it's normal and it happens to all of us. But do you have any ideas on how somebody, when they see I'm triggered, I'm triggered, how would they not collapse into feeling some shame around that?
Well, so you first, like a little cognitive education. So I give quite a bit of that in the book, helping people understand that this is built into everybody's brain to react quick and not even think about it. And those quick reactions are from that amygdala part of the brain, and they are what helped you survive as a child. You needed to shut down or put up a wall or something like that when you were a kid. So beginning to have some understanding of where these patterns were learned and why, and that it's universal for your brain to do that. And I also talk about a trigger reaction is like a runaway freight train. So don't think you ought to be able to just control it. We have to really do some inner work. And that's what this book is about. It guides you through various steps of inner work so I say there's a cognitive element, which is what I just mentioned, but the inner work part is going to that moment when you started to feel like I'm shutting down, I'm not coping, and shame comes up. You might not even be aware of hardly anything in the moment, but after the fact. So I have people recall triggering incidents after the fact and bring a little bit of that feeling back, but activate your inner witness, your inner compassionate space holder. So I have a number of exercises that help people first calm your nervous system and then create a bigger space in which tender things can come up without grabbing you quite so much. It's almost like you've got the ashamed, tender part of Veronica and the more seeing the big picture part of Veronica that understands some things and also is tapped into a kind of a heart energy. And I just ask people to imagine this part of you, this tender part, as a much loved child. And they come to you in pain or in distress. You wouldn't tell this child, get over it. I mean, some of our parents did that, but we would not, I mean, and if you do, then I have another activity, because some people are very harsh with themselves, where you even create a bigger space around that. And there's always an ability, which we don't even know we have it. It's almost like I want people, once people realize that you could step back from something, your breathing practices and some body sensation awareness practices can help you get a little more distance, but at the same time, open your heart to this tender part of you. And so it's those kind of practices that really heal the shame and heal those trigger reactions over time. You have to practice these practices over and over, and then pretty soon you will get triggered, but you'll notice it quicker because you've done this work to, hey, when I'm not triggered, practicing, almost like practicing as if I was triggered,
Totally.
get a little more distance from it, and then you can learn how to manage it.
It reminds me of the steps that I take my anger management clients through. It's like we practice, we role play a lot of scenarios that they're having problems with so that they have a different way of responding instead of reacting.
Yeah. And when you're not in the situation, in the heat of it, you actually do have more choice.
Yes. And that's, and stopping. No, I think it may be true for your process as well. But I know in anger management, we're teaching people to notice what's happening to their physiology before they get to that point of no return.
Right. And so that's what I was saying earlier about couples. You talk to each other about here's some of my early warning signs. And
yes.
I'm actually responsible for saying pause. I'm not expecting you to read all my body signals, but it's good to have a conversation. And if I see any of those body signals on you, like, deer in the headlights, wide-eyed look, I might say pause just because I want to be supportive to you. Yeah. Or I might say pause, and this is back with intimate couples now, I might say pause because if you're triggered, my nervous system's going to get triggered too, because we're kind of wired together.
Right.
Our emotional connection has us be super sensitive to how the loved ones around us are doing.
That's a really good point. We often hear that neurons that fire together wire together.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking this is a great concept that you're putting forward here, which is that couples wire their neurons together.
Yeah.
So that
and there's probably some transfer of that principle, couples, to our whole society. Veronica, you were mentioning earlier about how the society's kind of on edge with all the different crises, all these intersecting crises. So, if you're driving down the freeway, you said, you notice aggression or tension around you, that affects your nervous system too.
It does.
So we need to have compassion for that level of getting triggered too. And like, whoa, we are not doing well. Let's all take a big collective breath here and love ourselves, poor babies that we are.
It's true. Well, in your book, you say that most people are run by their fear of emotional pain. Mm-hmm. And that really resonates with me because I know working with my clients a lot of times that the whole idea of experiencing their emotional pain is so daunting. Mm-hmm. that there'll be a lot of effort to try to avoid it. I'm wondering what you might say to that fear if so many of us have a fear of emotional pain.
It's normal.
How can we get past that?
It's normal, but we can train ourselves to handle more and more of what we would call inconvenient truths or unpleasant realities. But first, we have to know it's absolutely normal to not like emotional pain. I mean, who likes pain? But if we can remember, I try to help people remember what it was like when you were really little, and like, where'd you get the idea? Where did we get the idea that there's something bad or wrong about me if I'm in pain? See, we don't like pain, but we've made it a shameful thing, and I'm bad if I feel it. So I have to even cover it up and develop all these personality defense mechanisms to hide that I'm in pain. So I act cheery when I'm feeling low and stuff like that. So I try to, and hope that people listening now can put yourself into this. We all grew up little and helpless in a world of big people. And we were so dependent on those big people that we became very vigilant about what made them comfortable and what made them uncomfortable. And what almost all of us noticed, figured out just unconsciously through the learning of association was that when I'm afraid or I'm crying, that makes my mommy or my daddy or my caregiver uncomfortable. So then I get the idea that there's something bad or wrong about me if I'm in pain.
Yeah.
So I
And,
want
I
people
see
to kind
this
of
in
feel
movies.
into that, how that came to be, and realize, gee, that's faulty learning right there.
I see it reinforced in modern movies where the parent or the lover says, shh, don't cry.
Yeah.
I just want to scream when that happens in the movies. I'm like, let them cry.
Yeah, you and me both. But also people will say, talk show or something, person being interviewed, they start crying, they'll go, I'm sorry. They go, I'm sorry for crying. And that's just part of our culture. But you and
I just saw that last night on a Netflix documentary.
Yeah, people need to be giving compassion to the tears, not apologizing for them,
Totally.
So with work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing, we're really trying to change the culture so it's safer to feel and to support each other in feeling.
Yes, and then that leads to all kinds of wonderful, juicy things, like in romantic relationships, better sex. I would love for you to help us understand how the fight, flight, and freeze response occurs in relationships. I know we're kind of talking around it, but if you could just give us something so we could see, oh yeah, I see how this is happening in my romantic relationship, how I actually, because a lot of people don't think this trauma response is happening in the relationship. They think it's happening out in the world or something.
Yeah. So let's say you're having a nice conversation with your intimate partner, and then your partner just stands up abruptly and says, I'm going to bed now. And they just walk away. So my nervous system, I'm probably going to go into freeze. Oh, I'm going to say something automatic. See, people won't know that they're triggered. They'll say, oh, okay, see you tomorrow. We're used to, like a lot of us, at least, we're used to covering over. The nervous system is really going into a reaction right now, but all you feel is maybe a tiny bit of let down, but you're so used to overriding it. And so you make this automatic, yeah, see you later. But then if you really were to pause and, maybe you're going to have a fight the next morning out of the blue and you don't understand why. But if you really looked at, oh, I was carrying that painful reaction. And for me, let's say for my nervous system, it was a freeze, like kind of shocked and don't know what to say. And maybe another person would holler out, well, you're always so tired. We need to take you to a doctor. Okay. That's actually a fight response.
Right.
Again, people don't realize that that's a fight response. Some people, they are reacting and they have to get that last shot in, And so I'm giving you example. I'm not telling you what goes on in the nervous system so much, but what goes on in interpersonal relations. So, I could describe the nervous system reactions, but that probably isn't as interesting as the actual behaviors, the way I'm describing these now.
Well, but what if this is something I've done? Because in my first marriage, my husband often just wanted to get up. He was done talking and I wasn't. And so sometimes what I feel is my feelings would be hurt. And then I might say something like, okay, fine.
Yeah. Well,
which is that?
I was going to say that's a little mixture of fight and freeze, I think.
Yeah.
Because you said you had to get that parting shot out, so that's it's a little bit aggressive there.
Yes.
But you also were shutting, as you're doing it, you're not really, because fight would really be. And my example was sort of a mixture of fight and freeze, because real fight would be, no, I'm, not until I finish what I was saying, and you sort of run after the person. That's a more fight response. And then with some criticism and stuff like that. So that's what like, so with your fine, I
Fine,
would
I often would,
say that's, you know, you can have a mixture of different
yeah,
reactions.
I think I would often segue, I'd lob that and then flake.
Uh-huh.
I'd like go sit in front of my computer or go do the dishes or something.
Mm-hmm.
That I kind of try to comfort myself. I'm all alone and nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I just won't need that person anymore. No.
Exactly. Is that flight?
That's flight.
That's flight. Oh, honey, I got that one down. That's embarrassing. I think a flight is, that's cowardly. You know, you do that last. I like to think of myself as a fighter, but actually I've done a lot of flight response.
And, you know, there's another kind of flight that people don't realize is flight. And that is, you know, the reasonable one in an argument who's trying to talk the other. No, now let me tell you what I really meant by that, honey. And remember, this happened and then that happened, and only those happened before I said this. All of that defensive talk is a kind of flight, because you're trying to get the other person, you're trying to create like the other person not being so upset. So whenever you're trying to get the other person to not be upset, it's a kind of flight.
Oh,
and you got to know you're triggered. That's another thing. People don't realize they're triggered when they're talking reasonable like that.
Okay, so look, Susan, I do that a lot.
Well,
I do.
You should be saying pause.
I got way more flight in me than I ever knew. Okay, so, but that, I guess that makes sense because my father disowned me when I was 19 and I just, you know, never went back home because he wouldn't let me.
Yeah,
so
I don't want
I've got
I don't want to go where I'm not wanted.
Yeah, I've got I'm not wanted, so I'm leaving. That's my MO. Mm-hmm. So what should I do to interrupt that and go into this pause? What does that look like even?
Well, in an intimate relationship, it's really good, first of all, to inform your partner about, I noticed this pattern, and the book will get you guys in conversation about our patterns, you know, so right. how your flight looks and what that really means, like what's the fear underneath that. So how to deal with that is, you notice the behavior and you can talk to a partner or just talk to yourself about it. But what we're most interested in is what's the tender need and the fear story that causes you to go, well, I don't want to go where I'm not wanted, you know, help you. So what we start with is the memory of an incident where you did that, you know, recent adult incident. And okay, go back to what your body was feeling, what your emotions were doing. Was there any kind of a story like, boy, I don't matter, some kind of a mental, and you kind of like inquire. So this is called compassionate self-inquiry. And you just inquire and you feel and you breathe and make a little more space. And there's a process where you will feel, as you're inquiring, tender emotions coming up. And whenever you feel a tender emotion, you give that some space to just be felt. Because what happened when you were young that then persists is certain parts of yourself got locked into a freeze or got stuck at age 6 or at age 10 or even at age 1. You got certain parts of yourself and your ability to express your needs got stuck, and the energy just kind of, it was like repression. You know, repression is kind of a psychological thing where you stop feeling something, but it's still down there motivating you. And so once you can like get a little of the energy moving, oh boy, I repressed a lot of pain around that particular instance with my father, for example. And then you can you don't dive headlong into these painful memories, but you know, just dip into them and you start moving that energy. And that's called processing old pain. And then the process is the rest of you is witnessing and kind of welcoming this part of you back in to the family of you.
Yeah.
And that's called integration. And that's the growth process. We keep integrating more of our parts that we didn't even know we had.
You know, I have to say, when I was reading that part of your book about the integration, it really reminded me of internal family systems, which is another modality developed by Richard Suarez about 30 years ago. Just the idea of integrating all those different parts who have different agendas, different traumas, different memories, different reactions.
Yeah.
And when you talk about that place that's calm and compassionate, those are like two of the 8 characteristics of self in IFS.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and in IFS, you're also trying to get some kind of witness activated, right? Who can kind of hold all the parts together, like a good leader.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And those parts, again, shame-free zone, none of those parts are bad. But they do things that maybe helped us survive when we were younger, but are getting in our way now. Susan, I want to ask you, if your partner is triggered,
Mm-hmm.
how could you help them? It's a
Mm-hmm.
2-part question. How can you help your partner if they're triggered? And also, how can you make sure you're not projecting your own stuff onto them by saying, hey, you look like you're triggered?
Okay, if you have the impulse to say, hey, you look like you're triggered, that would be an early warning sign to check your own nervous system, see if you yourself are triggered. Because as I said, we are wired together. And if you have a pause agreement with your partner,
Right.
me saying pause I've actually agreed with my partner that whoever says pause, we're going to stop talking and we're going to feel and go, now my partner said pause, so that might mean they're triggered, but let me check and see the state of my nervous system. So couples can just help each other by just saying pause rather than saying it looks like you're triggered. It's okay if you want to say it looks like you're triggered and then say, and could we pause? I mean, if you want to say that, it's better to just say pause. But the other thing, and this is very practical, something you actually can do in the moment to help your partner feel more safe and be less triggered, is you've already had a conversation about what kinds of things trigger each other. And part of that conversation is, what are the core needs underneath those reactive behaviors? The core needs, the core fears, like the fear that I don't matter. And so the core need would be that I do matter. So how do I, let's say I know that that's one of my partner's needs, is that they always think everybody else is important, but me, what about me? They have that tendency.
Right.
So if I know my partner has that tendency and I'm not triggered, I can attend to him and go, oh, honey, I think you might need a little loving right now. Would that help you? Or just offer co-regulation in the way that they've already told you at other times would be helpful.
Yeah.
So we can help each other heal that way, as well as doing the inner work.
Yeah. Well, and that's great, unless you're both triggered. And I got to tell you, one of the things I have found working with couples, and also, of course, it's true in my personal life, but I would think it's just me, except I've worked with hundreds of couples. And what I've seen over and over again, maybe you've seen this too, is their triggers are uniquely fitted to each other. So that the comforting that one needs is triggering for the other one, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always just so much fun helping them navigate that. It's like, okay, that's when I say, and I use the term timeout, take a timeout, because both people are just not going to be able to find that place. But you have something called Pause, Calm, Inquire, and Repair. 4 steps.
Yeah.
So can we just go through each one? What do we do when we pause? What do we do around calm? What is inquire and what is repair?
Yeah. So I've hinted at each of these in different ways, but let's put them in a nice, neat package here.
Okay.
We have a pause agreement. So that's couples need to have a pause agreement. Sometimes a whole family could have a pause agreement that if any of us see somebody else acting out or withdrawing, we'll say pause. And, if we're sitting around the dinner table, we'll all, and this is the calm part now, we'll take 5 or so slow conscious breaths together, or we'll feel the weight of our butt on the chair, our feet on the floor. We'll do some kind of self-calming, self-grounding kind of activity for just a short time. Then, like if it's a couple and it's one of those vicious cycle type of things that you just referred to, the triggers just fit perfectly. Like she pursues and he withdraws and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So if it's that volatile kind of trigger, we'll do some deeper self-calming, might have to take a physical break from each other. We had the pause and we just kind of checked in. Okay, did 5 breaths do it to bring us back to presence? Nope. Let's take a longer break. And if we take the longer break, then we do the inquire. So we've said pause, calm yourself if you need it. And most people would do well to take a break if they've gotten any kind of real hot energy going.
Yeah.
You can't really calm that down in 5 breaths. It could take a day for some people, but I don't advocate taking a day. I think once you learn these tools, you can do all of this within an hour at the most.
Yeah.
So you do an inquiry where you start with the agitated feeling, you create a witnessing space, and then you just follow. And there are some little avenues that you might get stuck going this way and that way. And, so I try to help people, but there's a lot of guided inquiry activities in the book where just by reading the book, you're actually doing the practices. So that's inquire. So pause, calm, inquire / be with, and then repair is the making up after a fight part. And
everybody's favorite part.
It's the part we need. If it's an intimate relationship or a family or possibly friends and siblings, if it's a fairly close relationship, you would have an agreement to engage in these 4 or 5 steps. If you're just out in the world with people, you don't have an agreement to do the repair, but I'll tell you what the repair looks like. It's something like you start with an apology if you did any reactive behavior that affected the other person.
Right.
Like, first of all, you say, is this a good time to do our repair? And then you say, I'm sorry that I got in your face and called you a bitch. You didn't deserve that. I was triggered. It was probably my fear of not being cared about, that I don't matter, coming up. Because, and then my own side, this is not what you say in your repair, but just between you and me, it's because the reason that person starts calling somebody else names is they're desperate to get the attention of the other person. It's not like coming from a cruel motive, even if you call somebody a name, but you have to own it. You have to, I'm sorry, I called you that. Maybe you don't want to repeat the word in your repair, but I'm sorry I called you that. You didn't deserve that. It was probably my fear of not being important coming up.
Yeah.
I need, and then there's an optional phrase, when you did da-da-da, whatever you did, it brought back old memories and feelings of when I was a child and my mother did da-da-da. And what I really need, I'd like to take it back, And if I could just tell you what I really need, I need your help feeling that I am important. That's all. You just end with a vulnerable disclosure about your core need. And the other person, depending on the nature of the relationship, will probably let go of feeling blamed when they hear a vulnerable disclosure and an apology. And they'll say, yeah, you are so important to me. You know, they will be able to give reassurance, but not always. It depends on a lot of things, but you still are repairing adequately if you just reveal that acting out behavior came from this softer need.
Yeah. Yeah. And that opens our hearts in an empathetic and compassionate way.
Yeah. And it gets people getting used to being vulnerable around their triggers, because there's just such a tendency to want to defend yourself.
I was just going to ask you about that, because I know a lot of times there's an impulse to blame. And I certainly feel that in myself when I feel like my partner's been unjustly cruel to me or something, or cold. And working with my clients, I often have to work with the, no, it's her fault, no, it's his fault thing. So can you say a little bit about how is it if we want to move to this place where we're going to apologize for being triggered or doing something that we don't want to do when we're triggered? How do we get past it was his or her fault that I did that?
Yeah, well, the self-compassion work, and even having to say the words, I need your help feeling that I am important, both of those pieces of this 4 or 5 step program, both of those pieces help you get more comfortable with vulnerability and emotional pain. And once you're not as afraid of emotional pain and think that, it's like the end of the world if your partner doesn't, isn't happy with you, or you're not happy with them, you get doing these activities kind of trains you to tolerate more emotional discomfort, so you have the less need to blame. That's one piece. But I teach people just cognitively that whenever you're triggered, it's your old pain, and the trigger reaction is actually a very valuable tool for self-knowledge. It allows you to look deeper into what's unfinished in your childhood, bring some healing to that old wounded part of yourself. And I'm not going to say your partner's doing you a favor by triggering you. That would be a little extreme and insensitive to say that. So I wouldn't say that, but just if people have a little more sense of that, it's kind of meant to be. Nature wants us to heal, but it has to really do something to get our attention, like these trigger reactions, because our tendency is to go to sleep around pain, or to deny it or repress it.
Yes.
So I actually find that when people do these practices, the need to blame dissolves.
Yeah.
I don't let them blame in my sessions. So if people start doing blaming, I go, oh, there's a trigger in the space. Let's all pause. We're not, and see, the other thing is people talk on the level of content, well, I didn't say that. Well, the reason I said that was because you said this. If they stay on the level of content versus the level of feelings and talking about their real insecurities, their fear, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. If they start talking on that more sensitive, tender level, they're going to be able to hear each other. But that talking about content is actually a waste of time. And I just tell people, we're not doing this. I mean, I'm very directive with my couples. We're not doing this.
I have a pet phrase that I bring to my couples. In here, we're about feelings, not facts. You can leave the facts, check your facts at the door.
Perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And one of the things I'll bring up to them is say, look, we don't know what the facts are. Each of you have your own movie about what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't actually even care what happened.
Right.
But if we had video cameras, multiple video cameras in your living room or bedroom when this conversation took place, we still wouldn't know exactly what happened. Have you not watched a few football or tennis matches, a few football games or tennis matches? We always have the replay, and the judges still can't decide.
Mhm.
So get rid of it.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
not the
with
point.
you.
How do you feel?
Yeah.
How do you feel? You bring up a very sensitive topic. I think this is going to be hard for parents to admit to, but that parents get triggered by their own children.
Yeah. I've got a whole
And
chapter
what
on
can,
parents and children.
obviously, when it comes to our relationships with our children, it's different than our relationships with adults.
Mhm.
So how, and I am talking about underage children right now.
Me
So
too. That's what I'm-
obviously, we can also get triggered by our adult children.
Mhm.
Guilty. But what about when they are in our care
Mhm.
and under the age of 18? How do we deal with being triggered by our own children?
Yeah, so I do have a chapter about that, and I'm speaking to parents of children under 18, but actually a lot of these tools will work even if you're triggered by your adult child, you know.
Okay.
So the thing that I say and illustrate in the book is being a parent is a setup for getting triggered, because so much of your life is dedicated to the other person's needs and not your own needs. I mean, let's admit it, us poor parents, you know, like, have you ever felt, what about me?
What little narcissistic monsters, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. They're so entitled, you know, and
And
so
demanding.
and so we need to have a safe space, whether it's just in the dyad of the two parents or some other adults being able to admit, yeah, I do get triggered at times by this or that situation with my child. And there's a number of others besides the what about me, because sometimes your kid, their very deficits will remind you of your own deficits. And I tell some stories in the book about that. So I just.
Yeah, or what about this, Susan? Because I know this came up for me when I was parenting my stepchildren. Fear that they are not going to get the life lessons or to be able to have a successful adult life. Fear that somehow or another your parenting is failing them, and so then you overcompensate by trying to lecture them about something from a fearful place, which I think is triggered.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times when you are afraid that they're not going to have a good life, either the child is behaving in a way that's a little too similar, uncomfortably similar to you, or they really have such a different style than yours. You're a real technical, logical person, and your kid is like a dreamer, and doesn't seem to do things in a straight line, and you're worried, oh my God, they're gonna have a terrible time.
Or they just get lost in video games.
Yeah. So whatever the reason, the practices are the same. Notice.
Are you sure, even with smartphones? Isn't there a smartphone clause for parents?
No, you'll still, the parent doesn't have ultimate control, and the child triggering you as a parent is about sometimes feeling helpless and out of control, or feeling not listened to, or feeling, what about me? You're so entitled, those, but the underneath you're so entitled is the what about me. And so there's always a vulnerable fear underneath your sort of rational reasons for being worried about your kid. And so I really counsel parents to spend some time with yourself, not necessarily in the presence of the kid. You might have a pause agreement, but you're probably not going to it's not going to be like when you're with an equal partner, like a
Right.
married couple or something. It's not going to be like that, but you can still do some of the practices depending on the child, and ask the child, hey, could we pause together right now? Let's calm our nervous systems down and see what we really need right now. And as a parent, if you can if you have enough practice with these tools, you can guide your child in a good way. Because the kid wants to please you. I mean, even if they seem a little bit of, rebellious, every kid wants their parent to think they're great and wants love, no matter what age. And so if you just kind of kindly say, I'm here with you, let's do this together. Nobody's blaming again. We're just doing a practice. So if parents can learn this, they can teach their whole family.
Yeah, and I think if the parent is learning to apply that to themselves, because they have all these younger parts inside themselves,
right?
So that whole reparenting integration process could feed into being a better parent as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Susan, I could talk to you for another hour. I'm going to be continuing my journey through your book here. Once again, I just want to hold it up because I'm so crazy about it. I really like it, from triggered to tranquil. Can you tell the viewers just a little bit about how they can reach you? Of course, I'm going to put all your links at the bottom of the video, but sometimes it's nice to also just invite them to reach out to you.
Well, I would like,
and how to find your book.
Yeah, well, the book you can get anywhere books are sold. The online bookstores, the indie bookstores. So, but if you go to susancampbell.com and subscribe to my newsletter, you will get information about my free monthly group coaching calls. So I offer this as a service, and I work with people on the call. It's the first Tuesday of the month, 10 a.m. Pacific time. But I put the link in there every month because I want people to subscribe to my newsletter, because I want
to be there. I want to do that.
And we're a little community of people who have been kind of coming to my events for a while, and so we practice with each other. We practice authentic communication, and we practice working with our triggers and things like that. Last time we worked with the polarization around the COVID to vax or not to vax issue.
Oh my God.
So, I mean,
there's a hot button.
We get into it. And so I just encourage people to browse my website, but then particularly to subscribe to the newsletter. I'm not selling much these days. I'm 80 years old. I'm on, I'm on the downside of my career, but I would like people to buy this book and come to my free calls if you want to.
Wait. How old did you say you are?
I'm 80.
No, I don't believe you.
Yeah. I was born.
I do not believe you, Susan. You're lying.
I really do have the vitality of my same self when I was 60. I haven't really.
Wow, you're my new role model. I swear to God, I am just in shock. I mean, you said 50 years, so I was thinking, okay, I guess she's got to be 70, but 80, no, you just blew my mind. Right on. Thank you for being who you are, not only for all the beautiful wisdom that you're bringing into the world, but also for being an awesome role model to all of us women who are putting our wisdom out into the world. We need role models, other women that we can look up to and emulate and aspire to. So thank you for that too, Susan.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna definitely put that link below this video so people can join your group, and you'll definitely see me in there one of these Tuesdays as well.
Be great.
Sending you all my love.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
I loved our conversation. You're good at what you do, so keep it up, girl.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a lot of fun. All right. Bye for now.
Bye.